Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group for this Wednesday, December the 11th. If you haven't finished your Christmas shopping, time's really running out, but do that after the show as we're streaming to you live on this Wednesday night on YouTube and Facebook. Our guest, Mark Sudduth, back to recap the end of another Chase year, a very busy one. On our panel tonight, we've got Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach, Frank Strait in Columbia, South Carolina, and Sam Walker's back with us from the Outer Banks to join our conversation with Mark. And we have so much we want to get to, and we invite you to leave a comment wherever it is you are watching so that you can join the conversation with us. Mark, I don't even know where you want to start with this year. Here at home, someplace else in the country, what was this year like for you?
The busiest ever in my career. And by the way, great to be back with you guys. Thanks for inviting me. The year started off in Kansas and with a blizzard. In fact, what we'll do, we'll go back and forth. I'll share some screenshots with you here. So let's go back in time real quick, and I'll just show you how it worked out. This was back in, let's see, where did I put that? In the January, out in Dodge City. Started out with a blizzard out there. We're in the hotel here, and I'm going to go outside and check things out. We'll take the audio down here. And it was
I love
full
the
on.
first-person view, though. This is literally like the year through Mark's eyes.
That's right. My friend Scott, who's also in Columbia, he came to help out. Always good when we have people helping. But there you go. Those full-on blizzard conditions. Temperatures in the low 20s. Winds were 50 to 60 miles per hour. And there's just nothing like it. Your face gets really cold really fast. I love it. I do. It's the neatest thing. Knowing, too, that a few months later, we're going to be looking for tornadoes and hail in this same area. That's what's so fascinating about that. So that's how I started the year in Kansas. And then we move along. And one of the things I wanted to do in 2024 was start studying, observing first, studying later, hail. So I took my Tacoma and paid a company up here in Wilmington a pretty big sum of money to make
yeah, I'm jealous of that.
a full vehicle hail guard, except for the hood. I mean, a hood's a hood. That's no big deal. And we could put all kinds of cameras on this thing and observe hail, get out and measure it when it's safe to do so. I just figured, hail is a big deal.
Yeah.
$60 billion in damage in 2023. And then, of course, we had this year in April where it tore up some areas there in South Carolina, south of Charlotte. Bad, a significant hailstorm. But here's a photo of what the Tacoma looked like. This is in Missouri at the end of April. And we just simply called it the Hail Project. Nothing fancy. I wanted to study hail. And this is our first year doing it. Got up in Nebraska and got some incredible scenes, really. Nature's just amazing. The mammatus clouds there. This is North Pratt as a supercell was coming in. This is a drone shot, a still image. That supercell produced a tornado about an hour and a half before I took this picture. But here's what I want to show you. This is what was so neat, and I'm very glad and appreciative that you're letting me do the screen sharing tonight, because one of the things I wanted to do was show people hail like they've never seen it before. And that's what we do with the hurricanes. And, I want to do something different. So we have all those GoPros, and then we had a very special one. And this just looks like regular GoPro video. And I'm just going to let this play through for a second. You can just kind of see me walking around there. But what's interesting about this is it's not regular GoPro video. Let's just fast forward a little bit. I repositioned the Tacoma, and lo and behold, this is 360 video.
And
Wow.
There's the supercell. It's an LP supercell, and you can see the hail shaft coming in there, and these big stones are hitting. And I got some time markers. I want to show you what I discovered. And the people at IBHS are very excited about this. Let's go to a minute 55. That's coming up here. Da-da-da-da-da. So right about
IBHS,
here.
of course, being the Insurance Institute of Home and Business Safety,
Yep.
which I hope our viewers know because we just went there a couple weeks ago and fired hail out
Yep.
of their cannons.
An amazing place. I've worked with Dr.
Yeah.
Giamenko and his colleagues. So I want to show you something. That is a hailstone.
Oh, wow.
Oh,
And for the first time ever, we can actually see it turning and falling through the atmosphere.
Wow.
Let's zoom in on it. All right. So look, you can see it coming. There it is. It's actually tumbling. Nobody's ever been able to, it's just been a theory. They assumed that they tumbled, and then we were able to capture that. And then you can see the
Splat.
absolute, the kinetic energy there gets transferred into the hail guard, and it makes the washers bounce, and just phenomenal. And you can see it again, it comes in. And I showed this to Dr. Giamenko, and he jumped out of his chair. I did it over Zoom, because just a simple little thing by putting the 360 cam up, I accomplished that goal up in Seneca, Nebraska, of seeing hail like we've never seen it before. Now, let me fast forward, show you one more because we got to get on with other stuff.
I mean,
I
if
think
we could
it's-
just watch this all night, I'd be
I
fine.
know.
Yeah,
I could
sure.
watch. Yeah.
So the next one's at 4 minutes and 30 seconds. This was about a 4-inch stone that hits. Zoom back out. There's a truck coming. You see this work truck on the right. He's approaching the stop sign. And right at 4:30, this big one hits. Bam! So the beauty of this is you can go frame by frame and go backwards. There it is. Look at that sucker. It looks like a baseball, but the scale is hard to grasp. There it is. It's falling through the atmosphere. That thing is 4 inches in diameter, and it hits just perfect where we can measure it based on the holes of the perforated metal to guesstimate that it was about 4 inches. Of course, it shatters and goes off. I mean, even the chunks of it are like huge.
That man in
So-
the truck didn't know what bullet he just dodged.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Mark, the washers. Explain the washers. Is that
So-
intentional?
no, these were left over from
Oh,
something else that we were doing earlier in the year.
You should have said yes. They're very scientific.
I was
They're
going to say
very
that,
important.
I would think that would be something that you could actually use to measure mass or something like that.
Who
with
knows?
something-
Who
what something
knows?
strikes and how
Yeah, they're-
high the washers bounce.
They're just, we call it yeeted, hail yeeting.
Yeah, that's yeeting. Definitely yeet. Yeet.
So that was amazing. And then we have one, this was just a few days before, up in Wyoming. This is literally out in the middle of nowhere. I'm driving along. So the other one was in Nebraska, and those were big stones, baseballs and softballs and golf balls, whatever. This one, I was carpet bombed by ping pongs.
Oh, wow.
Oh man, and then here's the beauty. You can look up and see the hail falling. I mean, that's just incredible. I mean, really, really, really doing some neat things using cameras to do what you can't stand out there. I mean, you
No.
could, but good luck.
What's protecting
Right?
your camera, Mark?
Nothing. It's just the GoPro is built that, pardon my French, but that badass. It's incredible.
Mhm.
I'm not even kidding. It's just a naked GoPro sitting right there in this tray. And we're going to do a lot better this coming year now that I know that this works. But look at all the different shapes and sizes of hail. I mean, this is a wonderful research tool for people like, Dr. Giamenko and others that want to see hail. Some of them are jagged, some of them are round, some of them look perfect like little balls. It's just amazing. And so that's how I started the year. Is
I
I think
January.
I think Ian's going with you next year after seeing how
I
that.
hope so. I hope so. We're going to try to get different people to go with us. And we're going to have more cameras and different experiments up there now that I know how to do it. Now, look, I'm going to tell you something. I probably drove, 6,000 miles from late April through the end of June, several expeditions, several days long each. Most of them, the hail was penny, quarter, whatever. And to find the really big hail was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And that was surprising. And I started getting frustrated because I would see, remember when Matthew Capucci found that giant one and like tweeted about it or whatever. He just waltzed out there. Oh, look at a 6-inch stone somewhere in
Yeah.
Texas. And I'm finding like quarters or whatever. And I mean, quarters, I mean, come on, that's nothing. I mean, in North Carolina, it'd be something, but out there, whoop-de-doo. I want the big suckers, and they're harder to find than I realized. And you got to be in the right place at the right time. And I learned a lot about the structure of the supercells that I'll be going after. And you have to avoid the tornadoes, which that's a whole other thing because some of those supercells, especially in April and May, they were pretty dangerous. We had those couple of outbreaks, and we're working the periphery of that, not wanting to be in the tornado. That's different. And lightning, that's the other hazard. Lightning, that scares me because I don't know, I'm in, kind of a Faraday cage there, but it was really exciting, and I think we accomplished some good stuff. I can't wait to show the IBHS folks on their big screen there sometime in March when we all get together again, especially when the folks from Canada come back down, hopefully.
Researchers like IBHS, they go out and they hunt hail, right? So you're not the only guy hunting hail, but you might be the only guy going, come on, mama, hit me.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And the amount of cameras that we have, again, through the crowdfunding, just tremendous because so many different angles. We're going to have even more next year. Got a new camera from Insta360 that's 8K, not $8,000, thank goodness, but 8K resolution. And the GoPro is 5.6K, and this will do 100 frames per second. So now we'll be able to slow those things down even more, have higher resolution, and I can provide Ian with frames as they turn, and then he can make 3D models out of it. That's science from photogrammetry. That's awesome. I love it. It's a lot of driving. So that's how I started the year. And then we went into hurricane season from there.
That's what I was going to ask you was I feel like we talked about so many of your hurricane chases when you're on with us, and you said this is the first time you've gone out and done hail. What led you to that new experience?
So the last several years, starting in 2021, we've had a concerted effort to go out in the plains in the spring and do something during severe weather season as a combination of working with our Patreon, because again, the funding was there for me to do it. I wanted to branch out, and we would use those opportunities to test equipment. So it's kind of an excuse. I could set stuff up out in my yard all day long, but that's boring. So let's go and do it in winter storms and severe weather. So 2021, 22, 23, that's kind of what we did. And 2 or 3 different expeditions that I'd go out, various people, either supporters or a colleague or somebody that go with me, and we'd try different things and be out. And we would test our weather balloon project out there, the old Herbie, the hurricane research balloon. There's just lots of different reasons to be out there. But I never found, because there's hundreds of tornado chasers, a handful of them that are doing real serious work. We know how that hierarchy works. I'm like, I don't want to be in the way, just another guy, in a line of people filming a tornado. Here's my view, here's Fred's view, here's Tom's view, here's, you know what I mean? So I was like, what am I going to do? Because I want to have a purpose. So long story short, we're sitting at Texas Roadhouse. Love those rolls, right? And May or June of last year, and with one of my colleagues, CJ, and he showed me, he held up his phone just like that, and there was a picture on Twitter of somebody with a huge 5-inch stone. And I was just like, oh, gosh, that is amazing. I mean, I wish there was some way that we could, study those and not have the vehicle destroyed. And just a light bulb went off. I was like, well, there has to be a way. And, it evolved into what we did this year. And we thought about buying an old beat up, '09 Chevy Tahoe or something for $3 or $4 grand. But yeah, that's fine. But what if it breaks down because it is very old or whatever? And I was like, well, I got my Tacoma. It's mainly for hurricanes, but if we can build some kind of a hail cage, so it's kind of like a shark cage for hail. And I got together with a company here in Wilmington, Edwards Incorporated. They do crane work and fabrication, and they've done some stuff for me in the early part of my career. And I went to them with this, and they created it. They welded it together and built me this big honker of a hail card. Now, the downside is the gas mileage on the Tacoma
Yeah.
is bad. It is
Like
so bad.
like pulling a camper, right?
Right. It's not good. But I just thought I want to study hail. I want to purposely get into these hail cores, and let's shine a light on it. Literally, let's show people what hail does, talk about it, and because it's getting more and more prevalent. And now, Ian and them, they're out doing it. There's this project next year called Ice Chip, and I cannot remember what all the letters mean, but it's a big project with multiple universities. Canada has the Northern Hail Project. I was on to something. It wasn't such a crazy idea after all, and I'll be part of, unaffiliated, but we're all colleagues, part of that. And I want to get into one though that it just absolutely is just dumping. The one in Wyoming was close. I want one where it's like a waterfall of hail and it's like a foot deep on the road.
Show title right there.
Yeah.
Waterfall
Yeah.
hail. All right, I'm on it.
Waterfall hail.
That would be amazing. I've seen the aftermath of those, even a day later. It looks like snow drifts. And then I want to get into one that's putting down 5, 6, 7 inch stones. And we're going to have a couple of unique ways to try to measure those using some, what is that, the non-Newtonian fluids, the oobleck. I think it'd be kind of neat to have a stone hit that. It's basically, when I get my daughter to make it with me, the stone would have a big barrel and it would hit it and hopefully not shatter and so like boom, and then slowly start to sink, and then we can go grab it real quick. But you got to watch out. There's a lot of ideas. There's because you can't have one of those hit you on the head, or it's a really bad
It's game over.
day. It's game over. And then the lightning. So a lot of cameras. We got the calipers. We have a refrigerator in the Tacoma in case we do get a big one. We'll wrap that thing up. It's not a refrigerator, it's a freezer. And if we really find a huge one, we'll measure it, do everything we can quickly, put it in the freezer, and we're done. Then we go to the closest WFO and register it or whatever, because that's just awesome. So the biggest one this year that I observed was at least 4 inches. And that's that one that I showed you.
Really.
Well, Mark, yeah, I was going to ask, what have you taken from your experience over the years with Hurricane Track to this new project? What have you been able to, besides obviously the use of technology and how you've
Right.
been able to incorporate the technology that you've been using with Hurricane Track for so long? How are you incorporating that into what you're doing now with the Hail Track?
Still doing the same kind of stuff, looking at the models, trying to figure out, but on a much smaller scale. The supercell environment is different, understanding a lot more about the lapse rates and stuff like that. So putting meteorology and then geography, it matters. Hail in Texas is different than hail in Kansas versus Nebraska versus Colorado. The LCL in Colorado, this is amazing. I was out in Colorado in early June, and it's like 65 degrees, and the storms are forming, and the ceiling is just like right there. Because it's different, right? And so there's Greg Nordstrom calls it nerd hail starts forming because it looks like nerds, candy, and it's not grapple; it's truly little baby hailstones. And to be under one of those when it started was amazing because you could look up, and again the ceiling was right there because you're already 6,000 feet up because it's Colorado. Guess stuff like that, and then it's hails and it's like 52 degrees outside. We normally think of it as being hot and all the cape and everything, and you don't need as much. I think Taylor Trogdon was telling me dew points 40s and 50s out there, you can get a big one, and the plains are different. You got to get those dew points higher, and it's cat and mouse. That's what it is. It's whack-a-mole because. The other thing is you got to be on those supercells pretty early because when they start to mature, the hailstones will start melting. It's challenging. The one thing that hurricanes have taught me too is that it's a lot of miles on the road, and you got to be patient and persevere. There's a few times it's like, well, this stinks. I don't want to do this anymore because I'm not getting the big stones. I thought it was going to be, because several times I've been out there since 2021, it was all we could do to avoid the hail course because we had rental cars. And of course, as soon as I spend more than 10 grand on fortifying the Tacoma, oh, the hailstorms are harder to find. It's just, gosh, it always works like that. So anyway, then we quickly got into hurricane season. They kind of overlapped. In fact, I came back from the whole thing from Montana at the end of June, got back just before July 4th. Bam, we had Beryl. And off to Texas I went.
What were you thinking when we had that lull in there, Mark, until we obviously got the big one with Helene?
I thought that Phil Klotzbach is going to be a Walmart greeter after that.
Oh.
Nah, just joking.
His job.
Maybe me too.
Yeah.
It was such a weird thing because, you want to be right. And of course, I don't make forecasts. I relay them. I'm a communicator. So you want the science to be right so people can trust it. But you also know that if it's right, and they've made movies about this, that bad things could probably happen. And I had done a Zoom with our community in July, I think it was, because I was very concerned that we were going to have potential societal impacts that would last a long time. Like this is one of those years. So I got everybody together because I didn't want to put a broad YouTube video out and, become Mark the Fearmongerer. He's saying we're going to have society. People take it out of context. Right. And now I kind of wish I had, this is the one year where I'd rather be mongering than blowing it off as, well, maybe we get lucky, because it didn't end up the way I thought. I thought we were going to have like an '05 type season with every couple of weeks a major landfall or something. But boy, Helene and Milton, we arrived at that same end through a weird way of getting there, that it was backloaded. And we got really lucky because Raphael and Sarah could have also really made things even worse. And we're going to end up with the top second costliest hurricane season of all time, 400 people plus dead. And I heard a stat recently that Helene now has pushed the needle for death from wind up again. I don't remember what the numbers are, but there were substantial, relatively speaking, amount of deaths from wind, indirect, in Georgia especially, from Helene, because that number has been really small. Ed Rappaport has this pie chart, and it's usually been surge historically. Now it's vehicle deaths or whatever, and wind was always this teeny little sliver. Now wind will be a little bit bigger. What a year. And it is, we do have societal impacts. So,
Mark, I want to go back to Beryl, because Beryl just exploded. First real big storm of the year, very real fresh into the hurricane season, Category 5, earliest on record. When you saw that, you're like, oh my gosh, is this going to be the season?
Right. That worried us all, because also in the modeling, there was another one coming behind it that looked like it was going to go. We were going to have Beryl and Chris, I guess. Luckily, the other one didn't happen. But Beryl was one of those ones that, oh boy. And then kind of how it fizzled there near the Yucatan, and then that rapid intensification, well, not definition wise, but it certainly got organized quickly before landfall in Texas. And then the big surprise for people in Houston that thought it's only a Category 1, and millions of people without power for several days in July. We were there. We saw that, and a lot of hemming and hawing about it. And it was and that's what, again, I was like, well, maybe those are those societal impacts that I was talking about. And this is just the start. And then we hit that lull. It was like, wait a minute, what happened? It was so odd. And then it didn't. And it came out in the end of September there, around the 20th or so. And we know how it turned out.
Frank, I want to ask you a question because I know you work with the state emergency management here in South Carolina. Now that we can talk about hurricane season in the past, obviously we all were on the same level of, man, this is going to be a major season. Were people looking at you during that long like, hey, what's going on?
I think that was for Frank, right?
I think it
Yes.
was for Frank.
Yes.
There
Sorry,
you
I
Frank pulled a Scotty.
Froze.
Yeah.
yeah, I did.
I'm gonna be Frank now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I had a cat distracting me here.
Do you want me to repeat the?
Yes, please repeat the question.
I was
Could
just
you
saying,
repeat the question?
Mark was talking about, we had this big lull, and then how forecasters, hurricane season was like, oh boy, what was it like in the emergency management part of the spectrum? I know you do a lot of work with state of South Carolina, like this big lull where you're like, oh my gosh, I've been telling these people forever it's going to be active season, and here we are in the middle, and nothing's going on.
Well, it wasn't as bad, I guess, for us because we did get two major events in South Carolina, so people weren't really thinking, oh, it's supposed to be a bad season. It is a bad season because we had Debbie, which caused the historic flooding in some areas. And then we had Helene, which caused more historic flooding in some areas and widespread wind damage across South Carolina. So, we preach it only takes one. And in this case, we had two.
Yeah.
So in South Carolina, it was a bad hurricane season, even though it wasn't quite as active as we expected. But nonetheless, it was still a pretty bad season.
And we had the PTC.
Right.
Right. There was also the PTC.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
I call it not Helene because we thought that storm was so close to
That was
actually
gonna be.
becoming Helene.
The non-tropical cyclone that acted just like a tropical cyclone.
Right.
I'm not saying that sarcastically at all. Don't take that the wrong way. It just
Are you sure?
It wasn't a tropical cyclone, but it had the same effects as one.
Yes, the impacts, right.
Well, and speaking of that, we here on the Outer Banks, normally we were going to have at least one watch or warning. We had one warning all season, and that was for Debbie. No, that was for PTC 8, and it was a tropical or storm. Yeah, I'm looking at my notes from my stories over the year. Tropical storm warning from Ocracoke South. We never had a tropical cyclone watch or warning on the Outer Banks, Oregon Inlet or Ocracoke Inlet to the state line in this season. Yet we still had impacts. That was how weird this season was for us up here.
Right. It was a weird way of arriving at some of these same conclusions, if you will.
Yeah, and you talk about the direct impacts that you guys had in South Carolina. You had in Southeast North Carolina, Mark, about what happened with Brunswick County.
Yeah.
On the opposite end, you go to us. We only had 2 10-inch plus rainfall events that caused flooding that wasn't catastrophic flooding, but we had, again, never having a true landfall here. We had I got to go back and look, and I'm going to verify it, but I believe we only had one path of an active cyclone pass over us on the Outer Banks this season. Yet we had everything that happened in Rodanthe again because of the offshore situation. So that's one thing that I think gets lost with some people when we say, well, it was a very active season, and they say, well, no, it wasn't. They forget that we also have to count all this activity that does pass through the central Atlantic and the far Atlantic that does have direct impacts, especially for my area.
Agreed. And it is about that word, impacts. And I have definitely shifted more towards that in my messaging the last several years, really trying to get away. And I got to do even better with it, with this category thing, because it just humans have to have everything laid out and categorized and color coded. And at the end of the day, and I tell people this, I want you to be selfish when it comes to the weather and ask yourself, how will this affect me? Because that's how my wife looks at it. I'll try to explain stuff to her, and she goes, what's it going to do?
Right. Yeah.
And I understand that, and I can appreciate that. And now, while with hurricanes, we can't get it all the way down to exactly what's going to happen at your house, just the overall idea of impacts is just far more important than, well, what category is this, or what category is this going to be? Like, I don't know, like if we could go back in time and zap everybody like in Men in Black, where you don't remember anything after you see this thing
Mhm.
or whatever, a new reality, and just change it to where it's impact based. Because this year was definitely a lesson in that. While I'm in Bermuda for Ernesto, and by the way, I took Starlink over there with me, my Starlink Mini. It is, if you hadn't seen one, it's
Oh,
just a little bit bigger than this little sheet of paper with a Santa Claus on it. It's literally like a little plate, and you plug it in and it works. It's unbelievable. I mean, it is a game changer. Airlined it over to Bermuda, plugged it into a vehicle that we were using over there with one of our supporters, and we're driving around Bermuda, streaming live, keeping up with Ernesto and the whole bit. And while all that's happening, and Sam, you know this, those waves are impacting the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And what was it, 5 or 6 houses went in this year?
yep.
You know, like, and again, you start with Houston, and let's back up even from there. What happened in the Southeast Caribbean with those islands and the windwards? Just devastating. A couple chasers went down there. They were using Starlink. Technology has come such a long way that we're seeing more and more stuff from different people, citizen journalists that are studying the weather now in different ways. But anyway, back on topic. So there was, the Southeast Caribbean hit on the Yucatan, and then Southeast Texas, and what it did there with the heat wave and all the people without electricity and the controversy for Centerpoint, and then just like, well, here we go. And then we had that lull, and we had Ernesto in there. We had Debbie. Now I miss Debbie. Debbie's interesting. It is the first time in my career, and certainly in the live camera era that we started 20 years ago next year, that someone other than me set up everything for a mission, and I wasn't there. And that was for Debbie along the west coast of Florida. Our colleague Marcel, I was coming back from Alaska. It was a family cruise up to Alaska, and I saw it coming. I was like, oh man, this is gonna.
Yeah.
And but we had a plan. Luck favors the prepared, and I had everything ready. He lives up near Raleigh. He stopped at my house. He picked up what he needed. And Debbie didn't look like it was going to be too bad. So he put a camera in Cedar Key at the usual spot that looks at that restaurant that that's like, I should trademark that shot. So many people use it now. Like, I started that in 2016 with Hermine, doggone it. Now I get there's like 4 cameras there. Like, whose is that and that and that? Anyway, Marcel put the cam up, and then he went up to Keaton Beach and put one down there, and both of them caught the surge, and Fox Weather was happy, and it was like, hey, way to go, Marcel. And then we had Ernesto, and I went to Bermuda for that. And is the golf ball still here? Yes, it is. So, Scotty, next time a hurricane comes into Myrtle Beach, you got to go out to the golf course and tell me, is the golf course littered with these guys? Because there was a course in Bermuda close to our Airbnb that I had to walk across to get over to the beach. And when we did so, Mike, my colleague that went with me, he and I, the wind had been kicking up. There were literally dozens of golf balls underneath the trees. And I brought back like 6 or 8 of them, and gave 1 or 2 of them to our friends at Fox Weather. But it has I don't know if the resolution will do it. Look, there's Bermuda.
Oh, wow.
Little hook shape right there. That's Bermuda. That's from Bermuda. So I'm wondering, like, does that happen in the U.S. when there's?
I'm going to have to check that out, because I am a sucker for going and looking for more golf balls. Because
we're going to have to
my
get a
bag's full,
hurricane
but
in
my
Myrtle
bag's
Beach.
full. Yeah, we're going to have to. My bag's full, but I'll always take more golf balls. So
It was the darndest thing. I mean, every tree had 4, 5, 6, 8 golf balls under it, and we collect. Anyway, that was weird.
So was that a wind? So do we figure out, was that from wind or surge?
Yeah.
Was it from wind that knocked them out of the trees?
Oh yeah, exactly. It was the wind.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just shook the trees enough, and golf balls fell out from who knows when. Yeah, I got a bunch more over to my right over my other table. I got a big office in here. It used to be my
Mark's
son's
out there picking
room.
up all the golf balls. Like, these are expensive.
Shagging balls.
Yeah. It was crazy. I did a Fox Weather hit from that golf course, showing them on the ground. I'm like, I'm not making this up. Look, there they are. I look like turtle eggs everywhere. But then we got back and we had Francine, and let's don't forget that one. And that one's the one where somebody stole our equipment, if you might remember that.
I do remember you posting about that.
Man, some just jackwagon, for the lack of, we'll keep it clean. They knew exactly what they were doing, came up and opened the camera box because there's a camera that looks at the weather station. We started doing that in 2021. And turns out people really like that because you can see the weather station getting all beat up and whatever. It's pretty cool. And Fox has figured out how to take the data and overlay it on the video. So you see the weather station and then you can see the live data up in the corner. Jordan Overton up there coded all that up. And we were getting ready to run it live. And one of our producers said, oh, something's wrong with it's like, uh-oh. So what happened is, I didn't lock these because who's going to mess with this stuff? I've been doing this for 20 years. Nobody's ever done this. So somebody knew what they were doing. They knew I didn't lock them. And it opens like a book, this particular case. So they opened and the camera's in the lid, and they opened it out, and they slipped his hand in there, and he unplugged the Nest Cam from the battery, and we were blind. And then they just harvested the equipment. But here's what's weird. They took it 40 miles to the west to Franklin, set it back up. The camera, it latches onto to the Jersey wall from a DOT fit with our equipment, and they turned the camera back on. And the weather station and the eye wall was coming, and they turned that back on and paired it with their AT&T hotspot because we were getting data from it, and we could look at the IP address. And then they had to have been watching our stream because we were talking about it. And that's probably where we screwed up because we had just been quiet. So I got all kinds of people to call me that are on our back end. I was like, can we put a payload on the Raspberry Pi, like remote into it and stick a payload on there that'll tell us where it is? Like the GPS said, yeah, we just got to get into it. I'm sure the guy heard it. So he unplugged it within a minute or two of that phone call, and it hasn't been reporting since. It's like, but now there's so many air tags inside these things. I laugh because anybody ever tries to do it again, it'll drive them insane because they're going to, and I'll tell you, you're going to find one that's obvious. Oh, there's the air tag, sucker. You're going to throw it away, and you're going to be driving along, and your phone's going to go, and air tag is seen traveling with you. Well, I just thought I got rid of that. Yeah, it's just probably a glitch. And you're driving along, and it still says it. And all the while, an APB went out to all the chasers, and we're going to find you. It's like Liam Neeson. Have a special set of skills. Right.
Yeah.
We're not going to kill anybody because, but, and the other ones are much, much harder to find. And let's say you find the other one. By the time you figure it out, we got you.
We're not going to kill anybody, but your tires may not have air in them by the time.
Right.
You're
Yeah.
Right. And as they say, we'll make you famous on the social media.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But we lock everything up now because we have to, and they're all locked down because the clamps, you turn them with these T-screws and you tighten the thing down to the Jersey wall. So now they're locked. So you literally cannot even unscrew it to take it with you. You're going to have to bring the jaws of life.
The whole Jersey wall.
Yeah, right.
The whole Jersey wall.
Some guy will probably do that because a lot of those Jersey walls have holes underneath where the forklifts come and they lift it. That's what's going to happen. Some dude's going to, oh my God, the whole Jersey wall's getting taken away. So there's that was Francine. And then we had the lull, and then we had Helene and Milton. And Helene was so many stories about that. I think the most interesting thing about Helene was the Steenhatchee cam right on this gazebo down there. We had a camera down there for Adalia. That was daytime. We knew this was going to be at night. And that camera, the water that came up the Steenhatchee was so fast and like it looked like time lapse. Like, oh, Mark sped it up 100 times. It was unreal, like out of control, and it's going the opposite direction. The surge pushed up the Steenhatchee River, and pieces of who knows what are going by. And finally, this massive floating dock just comes into the camera, crashes over the gazebo, and it's just leaning down, and water's rushing by, and it finally drains away, and that thing starts sloping down. The next morning, it looked like the bottom of a whale. And it was still running. Like all our cameras kept running, no matter, that's another thing. I don't know how Verizon did it, but everything was running. And the next morning, people are looking at the bottom on the stream, and they're like, did a whale wash up? It was all this speculation. There's barnacles, and it's like right there. You don't know what you're looking at. And when we went back a couple days later, oh, it's a huge 20-foot section of floating dock that's like sticking up in the air and sloped over this gazebo right in front of the camera. But that was extraordinary. I mean, just the velocity of surge. I mean, we saw what happened on the Swannanoa and elsewhere with river flooding and all of that dramatic video. This was storm surge, and it's not like dun, 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 dun. It was like, I mean, incredible. And this will all be in a documentary and so forth eventually. And then Cedar Key got walloped pretty hard. We have a lot of friends there now, including one of the producers or whatever he is from Fear Factor, friend of Joe Rogan. His name's Scott Larson. He owns the Low Key Hideaway, and it's a tiki bar and these little bungalows. And we worked with him in Idalia, and set up a couple cameras there this time that they all went underwater. And they're streaming live underwater. I don't know how that happens. I'm serious. It was unbelievable. Like the water came up, and then it wasn't 10 feet under, but it's submerged, and we're streaming live. And the camera in Tampa at Bayshore, if you know your Tampa geography, just insane. The 7 feet high, the camera, and the water's a foot under it. And these big waves are just coming across the shot into these massive houses. And that was Helene, which made landfall 100 miles up the coast. Like when people say it's not coming to Tampa, we don't have to worry about it. Again, it's the impacts. Oh, you sure did. The tons and tons of damage in Sarasota and all the way down to Nokomis and Clearwater, you name it, from Helene. And then, of course, we had Milton in October to just cap everything off.
Yeah,
I've talked a lot. Yeah.
Before we get to Milton, I was going to ask you about your Helene experience in the Carolinas. I don't know if that's what Scotty had in mind too.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, you're in Florida. Eventually, all attention turns to Carolina being your home state. Like, what were you thinking?
That's a good question. I was thinking, wish that everybody could have done more to get everybody out, because we saw the death toll going up and the devastation from the videos coming out, that it was a helpless feeling, because I thought the messaging from WFO, Greenville-Spartanburg, was spot on. It was Katrina-esque. All the national, local outlets, everybody did everything they should have done, but it was one of those situations with the precursor event, and then the amount of flooding from Helene. We were going to take the loss. There was not, we could have evacuated. You can't go back and look at that and say, well, had we done, there was just no way out. It's a bad situation. And then we saw how bad it was and still is. I haven't been back up there yet. My parents lived there for, 1994 until 2018 in Spruce Pine. And I saw a picture of Spruce Pine. I mean, Scotty, you and I were up there for that winter storm a couple years ago.
Yeah.
Right? There's a picture of Spruce Pine where the water was up to the roofs, bottom of the eaves there along that main street. There's a railroad depot deal, and there's the Tow River, and the water was all the way up there. And that's just mind-blowing that it could get that high. The Tow River could come out like that. I can only imagine Bakersville with the Cane Creek that comes down out of Roan Mountain. Truly one of that's where you can really say it's a biblical proportion disaster, just monumental scale that we've seen only through pictures, unless you've been there, and I haven't been there yet. But that was painful. But I'm going to tell you something else, coming back home from Helene and then the times I've been back to Florida since, starting around Florence, you can start seeing the tree damage from Helene, all the way down. It just gets worse and worse through Georgia. Just the massive wind field of that hurricane. I think we're going to look back at Helene in the future as one of the great hurricanes of U.S. history. I really do. Like, it'll sink in and we'll fully realize the scope of how massive that wind field was, the rainfall, the surge. Helene had it all. It really did.
I've seen some comparisons already on social media, not maybe the rainfall aspect, but the wind aspect, comparable to what Hugo did through South Carolina, Georgia, and North Carolina. And like you said, I've been able to go back to Morganton, my hometown, and like you said, like, you notice the trees that are down, and flooding's the big spot up there, but also there was a lot of a lot of wind damage up there as well. And that kind of gets second place, obviously, to the flooding that's taken place in Western North Carolina. But I mean, I hate to say it, it's just like the perfect storm of what you don't want to see in mountainous areas: wind, because we know the mountain's full of trees, and then the topography with the flooding, and it was devastating.
And so I know we want to get to Milton, but I know with Helene, it reminded me a lot of the situation we had in Eastern North Carolina with Matthew,
right?
Which was that interaction of a tropical landfall and a frontal boundary,
right?
But obviously, Helene being a stalled frontal boundary, whereas Matthew was the moving situation. It would seem to me, as someone who's not been trained as a meteorologist, but someone who has become ingrained in it because of what I do as a newsman, how much can we learn from Helene's situation, apply it to what we learned with Matthew's situation for the next time? I mean, we always learn from these. We always learn, okay, we always say that every storm is different, but we always try to use some comparisons. Right. Are we going to be able to take these two situations we've had over the last decade, specifically in our situation with the mountains in North Carolina East, and learn from that and be able to apply it to the next time we start seeing these different factors lining up and getting our messaging across that, hey, if you thought Helene was bad, this one's worse. It's going to be like Helene. It's going to be that type thing. Are we going to be able to take advantage of this in our messaging over the next few years?
Probably with the messaging, but I don't remember where I saw this. Somebody had a saying about a forecast is useless unless somebody acts on it or something. It's like a thing that somebody said. And I don't think, and I'm not trying to be cynical, I think it's just the truth, and you have to face the facts, that we might be able to do a little bit better of evacuating some people, but I think the population up and down, if we're just talking about flooding, the Appalachians is just too big, that we're stuck. And I think these, when they happen, they will continue to be deadly and cause a lot of property damage, because there's a lot more people living in these areas now than 1969 after when Camille and 72 Agnes, and that's just the way it is. I don't know. I mean, you can't come in, all right, everybody, you got to move away from these rivers. That's not happening.
Yeah.
So I think the messaging could get better, but I don't know what difference it'll make, because there's just a lot of different reasons why people either can't or won't leave. And that's a hard one, because they leave. Like, let's just say that half the people in Western North Carolina were able to get out a day ahead of time. They get out, we save their lives, but you come back and everything's gone still. I don't know, man. It's a lose-lose situation. It's really tough.
Yeah, we have that. We have that situation here when we evacuate on the Outer Banks. People won't leave because they know, one, we're not going to get back. We're scared they're not going to be able to get back. And that would have been obviously the situation that we saw in the mountains, and still see with 200 roads in North Carolina still closed, and 3 months later, you've got that the psychological part of it, the lonerism, whatever you want to call it. People go to the mountains, they come to the Outer Banks, they go to get away from being told what to do.
Right.
So you've got to fight that as well. But it's more about, what can we do better, to tell people, at least get higher ground or get somewhere that's not in those flood paths that, now we kind of have a better idea. I think people can visualize it because it's not 1918, the flood in 1918. They've got
Right.
active scars they're going to see the rest of their lives.
That's true. And maybe some more education up and down the Appalachians that could stem from what we learned from Helene, that like a tsunami, you just need to get to high. You don't have to go from Asheville to Atlanta, but if you're along the Swananoa, if you had to do it again, just get out of there, up to Shirley's house or something up the hill a
Right.
little bit to save your life. And for better or worse, at least you're still there, you're alive, yet your house is gone. Like I said, it's got to be, it's a lose-lose. Ugh. I
Mark,
really, really feel bad for those people.
you talk about the scars of the survivors and the people in the community. You came in and you saw what was happening in these communities. Can you give us one experience or one scar that you carried out of this experience yourself?
Well, for Western North Carolina, I haven't been back there yet, but elsewhere, certainly in Florida, um, it's interesting in Florida from some of these people have been hit repeatedly. If you think about it, Ian and then Adalia, and then this year, if we get all the way up to Milton, and even in Louisiana to some extent after Francine, it's different down south like that because people are more used to it. And I think the level of resiliency was pretty fascinating to see and pretty remarkable that example in Siesta Key, we were working with a guy that let us use his house to put a camera under and on and whatever. It's an Airbnb. It's a rental property for him. It's an income maker. And he had a good attitude. And he was just ready to go. Like, let's just get the people in here, get this thing back up. Now, I didn't get to go everywhere. I mean, there's people that lost a lot more. But maybe these are starting to become common enough, really since 2017, and even 16 with Matthew, that we're not used to it, but it doesn't sting as bad in the coastal areas because maybe we are used to it. And so there's a little bit more of, getting hit and you get knocked down, you get back up again. But the Appalachians, that was unexpected. The people up there, Asheville was supposed to be this climate haven. I've heard that used on different public radio shows and stories, especially, and not so much. And so up there, it's probably, like I said, eventually I'm going to go up there. I think part of it is time. I just haven't had time to. And then part of it is, again, my parents lived there, and I don't know what it'll do to me emotionally. A little selfish, but how will I handle that? And what am I going to say or do? It's my home state, and it is wrecked. But elsewhere in Florida, people really have taken it in stride. I didn't see anybody complaining. I don't know. I mean, maybe these are starting to become common enough that it's, we got to roll with another one. And we're doing a better job of building back, especially in Florida, because they keep getting hit repeatedly, especially on the West Coast. Now, Houston, that's a different story. People there, they were angry, and they went a week with no power in July there. A lot of stories out there, that is for sure.
Mark, before we go tonight, I know that you had some imagery you took during the solar eclipse, so I thought maybe we would take this opportunity here to circle on back around to that and end this 2024 look back on a high, happy note.
Sure.
And what you got to see, because I know you had some stuff visually to share with us and tell your story about this event that I got to tell you, it feels like a million years ago, given everything else that's happened this year.
Yeah, April 8th seems you're exactly right. So we'll just let this kind of play for a second as I tell the quick story. I was going to catch the eclipse in Texas. I can't remember the exact town off the top of my head, but it was locked in planning wise, whatever. I was down there in South Padre Island for the National Tropical Weather Conference. Everything was all set. And then the clouds looked like they were going to be an issue, and it was terrible. We all remember it was like, you got to be kidding me. The swath of clouds, that subtropical jet was awful. And it came close to crunch time, and I had my family, most of my children, all my grown children, whatever, and my wife and a couple of fiancés in there, you name it. And I put everybody on planes and we flew to Boston because I looked at Tomer Berg's cloud forecasting thing that he had set up. And there was a spot up there in Holton, Maine that just kept looking like darn near 100% free, of clouds. And this is real-time video of the eclipse there from Holton from my GoPro. We'll just fast forward it a little bit. You can see the shadow starting to come. I had seen the one in 2017 down in South Carolina.
Yeah, here at home.
And this one in Maine, snow on the ground, and then look at the shadow comes in. Oh my goodness. It was, I can't even describe it. It makes, like me, second time this has happened, I did the same thing in 2017. I just broke down. I couldn't help it. It makes me cry, and I can't explain it. And my kids are looking like, what is wrong with Dad? And I was on Fox talking about it, crying. I thought, "Ah." And other people were too, so I didn't feel like completely like, what's wrong with that guy? It is overwhelming. And it lasted, I don't remember what it was, 2.5 minutes or something, 3, whatever it was. It wasn't long enough. It was like, oh, it's so fleeting. But that was amazing.
I'm glad you said the videos in real time because it does look just like a sunset time lapse.
Right.
As you're watching essentially nightfall in the middle of the
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, there's real time again. The shadow is moving at, I think they said 700 miles an hour or something. And you see it coming that last few seconds. And bam, the sun is just spectacularly gone in this blackest of black of the moon there. The GoPro doesn't do it justice. Lots of great pictures out there. Of course, you've seen them. And like they say, the moment is over and that's it. And wait for the next one, whenever. What a year.
Indeed.
Yeah. Mark, we always appreciate you coming on here to the Carolina Weather Group at the end of the year and walking us through what you've seen as you journey out from your Wilmington HQ to experience everything that the year has to bring. And I don't remember now if it was before the show or after the show. We're talking about, a lot of times we hope these outlooks aren't correct. Right. We don't want it to happen. Yeah. Of course, we'd have nothing to talk about on the show if nothing happened. But this year has left us with a burden of a lot to talk about, and we know it's something that a lot of people, as you mentioned, will carry into the new year with those scars. And I just want to remind everybody that this is a rebuilding effort that is going to go on for some time, and we'll be keeping our finger on the pulse and remembering all of that as we go into the new year.
And the weather community deeply cares what happens to these people. We don't cheer when the forecast is right that, yes, there was a lot of hurricanes just like we thought. Take that. No. It's like, oh, gosh, I hate being right all the time kind of thing. And it's not arrogant at all because we do feel it. And I can see each of you in your own worlds posting about it. And you can just tell that most people, there's a couple of people out there probably that are Grinches and they love this kind of stuff, but that's a tiny, tiny minority. Everybody else that does this, from the men and women at the National Weather Service, through emergency management, to the communicators like us, the mix of even the social media, just the 14-year-old out there who wants to be the next whomever, they generally get it. And when you see something like a Helene or whatever, a Mayfield, we just came up on the anniversary of Mayfield. We feel that, and it's empathy and sympathy that, look, the weather is bigger than anything that we could ever imagine. And sometimes, as beautiful as that eclipse was on that wonderful day, the weather will turn against us. Mm-hmm. And we just have to do the best we can. But I think in this community, I think people just should know that we really do care. We don't like being right for the sake of some kind of a check mark that whatever, because when we're right, that means somebody got hurt.
Yeah. I think you're spot on.
And that's a positive and a negative at the same time. You know what I mean?
No, it's so heavy.
We got your back, though. We do. We got your back. This communication that we do, the weather community, we are here for a reason, and we appreciate every one of us that people tune in and give us the time of day, because there's a lot of noise out there.
There's a lot.
And
there's a lot.
We appreciate it a lot, and I appreciate coming on here.
Well, we appreciate what you do, Mark, and sharing your story with us. And I'll add on this note here. Pop this up on the screen if you're watching with us on Facebook and YouTube. But this Saturday, we're going to go down to Chimney Rock. We're going to take the Carolina Weather Group on the road, and this is a opportunity, an experience to see firsthand the damage that Chimney Rock, North Carolina experienced, adjacent Lake Lure experienced. As we've been telling you here on the show, they have been absolutely devastated. They've missed their fall tourism season. Those small businesses went without all of those tourists coming on through. So this is an opportunity to help that community get back on their feet through the sales, through those small businesses, through the opportunity, as Mark said, to see firsthand what some of these communities are like. So this is available to anybody who's watching or listening to our show. If you want to come out, it's Saturday, December 14th from 10 a.m. until 4 p.m. Parking is at the Lake Lure Beach, and there will be a shuttle bus that takes you down into Chimney Rock to see what that community experienced firsthand. Our plan here at the Carolina Weather Group is to be there, to document it, to share stories with you, and then using Starlink, as Mark mentioned earlier in the show, it's our intention to stream a special edition of the Carolina Weather Group somewhere in about the 2-3 o'clock hour in the afternoon on Saturday. So I hope folks get the opportunity to come on out. You can use the QR code there on the screen to donate financially to the recovery effort in that community if you wish to do so. And again, barring logistics, we hope to be live to you on the Carolina Weather Group YouTube channel from Chimney Rock on this Saturday. If you guys bear with me one more moment before we go, we have another bit of uplifting, bittersweet news here from our friend Evan Fisher up in the mountains, who shared this today.
Evan
X. I know we love Evan. Isn't he absolutely fantastic? So really heavy video here, and he gave us permission to share this with you. And I know you guys in Zoom can't see it, but our folks on Facebook and YouTube can. And you can just see this is the Asheville Christian Academy, home of the Lions there, and you can see firsthand some of the damage that the campus and buildings and cars sustained during Helene. $15 million in damage. Well, they announced that ACA will reopen to students for the first time since Helene on January 7th, starting off the new year back at home of the Lions, as they look to get some sense of, and I know it's a cliche, normalcy back together. Students will be returning to the campus for the first time, and you can see video here in light snow flurries as crews have been working real hard to get that campus back up and running. And I think that's a sign of hope amongst everything that's going on.
I'm gonna send a message tomorrow to Steve Bender at Fox Weather. I know he's coming back.
Okay.
And if he's gonna be there through the weekend, I'll see if I can get him to stop by and say hi to you guys. That
would be great.
Yeah, I know I've been seeing him talking about going back to Western North Carolina. I don't know if I think he was going down today. Remember, he was talking about the jet stream and all this bad weather. I don't know how many days, Thursday, Friday, into Saturday or what, but I'll certainly send him a message and see. And if he's around, hey, Steven, get by Chimney Rock and say hi to the CWG guys.
We would love that, Mark. Thank you so much. Hopefully we get a chance to meet him and so many other folks who I know who will be coming out. Brad Panovich, chief meteorologist at WCNC Charlotte.
Weather Brad.
Yeah, Weather Brad will be there. And last but not least, this is the last week. If anybody wants to order a CWG calendar with some awesome photos from across the Carolinas, this sits on your desk, and just a way to carry some of these beauty shots into the new year. There is an order form in the description of wherever you're watching or listening. I'm literally going to the post office this weekend and just standing there and mailing them. So there's an order form.
Know how that is.
Yes, fulfilling our own merchandise, folks. So if you'd like to get it in the mail this week so it gets to you or your loved one by Christmas, the order form is in the link. As I think we explained last week, it's $20 goes to supporting the show. Figure it's $15 for the calendar and a couple bucks there to get it mailed on out to you. So Mark, if you haven't already, you're going to have one of these coming your way.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So on behalf of Mark and Sam and Frank and Scotty, I'm James Brierton in Charlotte. Thanks for being with us here as we took a look back at 2024. We'll see you Saturday from Chimney Rock. But until then, be well, and we'll talk to everybody again real soon. Have a good night.